Hello, Reality Riffing, Rama Festival. This has been an incredible day. I mean, just a amazing day, and we get at the star-studded top of this winter solstice. I am extremely excited to sit down with the filmmaker, artist, and what I would call a Dharma artist, Mandev. Thank you for being here, Mandev.
Thank you for having me.
And so I think, one of the things that I'm so fascinated by that I'd love to just jump into is how you are using your meditative practice to basically construct art in all of the different ways, but obviously we're going to get into the films too. But I'd love to just hear a little bit about how the process kind of started for you and how it's developed in terms of putting these incredible films into life.
Yeah, well, my yoga practice is a huge part of it. I do Sarabandundes every day, and when I find with working with this type of energy and content, it's very difficult sometimes to get through it, and you need a lot of grit. So I really relied on the practice to get me through different parts of it, because it's, a little hard. And then, basically, I just construct images in a way that move my energy, and I don't stop until it reaches a certain point. And it really feels like I'm just chiseling away at a big piece of wood, trying to make a certain structure. And then once it's there, I'm done.
And I mean, obviously we've traveled around the world together for many years. And I'm surprised when I look in the film, when I see in the films some of the images that I didn't even know you were capturing. Is there something that kind of guides you in the moment to get certain images, or how is that happening?
Yeah, sometimes. And I think that's the beauty of having a lineage, because sometimes you're guided and you're not sure why, as you know too. And I think it's just I love shooting ordinary things, and then I love making them extraordinary. I really do see beauty in everything. And so a lot of times I just get an average shot, but when I edit it, I do it in such a way where I make it so I love it, and then I move on. So,
in terms of this past year, this is your fourth film that you've put out. I mean, you've been very prolific, and you've had incredible films before 2020, but this has been kind of a body of work that has been in response to the attack on Yogi Bhajan and the Kundalini lineage and our lineage. And curious kind of how the narrative developed for you as you went through these four films.
Yeah, well, with the Feudal Flow of Fate, that was the first film. And, it's actually interesting because Shabad Preet showed me my human design over Thanksgiving, and I'm a generator 5-1, which is a heretic investigator, which is essentially what I did. But anyway, so the Feudal Flow of Fate, that started where, all this stuff started coming out about Yogi Bhajan, and no one was saying anything. Yeah. And that was heartbreaking. Yeah. And so I had to do something. Because one of the things that I've learned, I love reading about, history and the French Crusades and the different churches. And this is a pattern that's happened over and over and over again. There's one community in the south of France, back in the Middle Ages, they did yoga, meditation, women had positions of power. And what happened was that, everybody became too conscious. So what did they do? They went in and destroyed it. Right. And the whole lineage disappeared into song and into art. And that pattern has been happening over and over again throughout history. And I found it interesting that everybody just ignored that. Right. And it was such a mind control operation. It was so obvious to me. And also, I've been working in the archives for a long time, so I kind of had a more of a perspective than maybe the average person. So I started the film just wanting to open up, I took Hadi Jivan's lecture that he gave when he addressed the situation, and he did it in such a neutral, beautiful, loving way. And then I researched different clips and found Yogi Bhajan talking about the situation, interweave the two. And then I try to use imagery to help move the consciousness from negative to positive. So that's for Fetal Flow of Fate. And then after we released that, I literally did that in like 4 days.
Yeah.
You know, and it's an hour piece. And then once I got going on it, I didn't sleep for 4 days. You know, it was just the film.
Yeah. Until
it all got out. And then the Golden Chain, which I really wanted to have a powerful image of that. And at first, the film started off with a burning, like a rose. Because when I picture like a human being in a soul and the purity of it, I picture a white rose. And I wanted to light it on fire to show what was happening. So, you know, I got 24 roses and lit them on fire until I got the shot. And I felt like terrible. I was like, I'm so sorry, roses. I love you, but you're going to a higher destiny. You know, you're helping the cause.
It'll be better.
It'll be better. So originally that film started with that image, but then I found this clip of Yogi Bhajan in a wheelchair and this other voiceover of him talking about how much he gave to these people who betrayed him. So I started it with that. But then that's what I really wanted to use was the image of the burning rose, because what they were doing was burning people's destiny. And that film actually talks, you know, like Fetal Flow of Fate was more like neutral and loving, and the Golden Chain was more like we spelled it out exactly what was happening. You know, we used, you know, images of like Buckingham Palace, you know, the Vatican, you know, because they're like the entities behind, you know, this type of pattern's been running in those type of systems for a long time.
Right.
And then reflective energy. So, you know, like things got kind of bad for the lineage. Mm-hmm. You know, we released the films and we didn't get like, I love you. Thank you. We got hate mail and we got like, it got bad. We got trolls attacking us, like our personal safety. Like that was a big issue because it's a paid attack. And it's, you know, in the physical realm and also in the etheric realm, there's lots of psychic attacks. Yeah. And that was tough too. So, like, I mean, every film, like, it got worse and worse and worse. And then, so I wanted to make reflective energy to kind of, like, punch back. And it was, you know, my moment, I guess. But so there's a piece of obsidian, black obsidian. It's a mirrored obsidian. And obsidian, what it does is it reflects energy. It reflects negative energy. And John Dee, who's a very famous occultist and alchemist, he worked with Elizabeth I. And he used to have a piece of mirrored black obsidian he used all the time to like look up spirits, and he used it for all his like amazing occult stuff. Right. So we have a piece his piece is actually in the British Museum. And we have a piece, Hadi Jivan has a piece that looks identical. So I took that, and with that imagery, and I wanted to spin the psyche and to like reflect back. So like I filmed it with, you know, it spinning, and then I slowed it down and then like did the different angles and then reflected like Hadi Jivan in it and, you know, so on and so forth. And then after that, so that's the third film. And then after that was, you know, I just really wanted to make a film. I wanted to end the year and this whole thing on love. Yeah. And what having a lineage and a teacher, what it can do for you and what it has been done for a long time. And, you know, so it's like Kundalini Yoga starts off, you know, with, it's not just in this system, it crosses over into the Buddhist system and, you know, wherever. It's an energy that goes back and forth. And so Yogi Bhajan studied with a Buddhist monk, Lama Lilian Po, and his teacher sent him to study, they studied together under the same teacher. And so before Yogi Bhajan was Mahan Tantric, it was with a Buddhist. And so I explored that part of the lineage and like how a lot of us are connected. And I just wanted to show like what the lineage can give you. And for anybody that, you know, stepped away from the lineage, like what you lost. Yeah. Yeah.
So when we're talking about art, I mean, I think one of the things that's profound and part of the mission of Rama Festival and just Rama as a whole is that art in this age that we came from and ages before was either not important or created out of function, or then in the most current kind of Piscean age, it was created out of neurosis or suffering in some way.
Right.
And now we've kind of moved into, as we move into the Aquarian age, this Dharma art, or art that's created out of the meditative mind, or the some sort of connection to something bigger. Lineage, Dharma. So just curious, as that exploration of Dharma art, how would you kind of speak to the experience of creating Dharma art?
It's beautiful, and it's so hard. There's a lot of forces I find that they don't want Dharmic art.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of obstacles, and it's a lot of muscle to get through something. It really is. I would spend hours on just a 10-second clip to get it right, and I'd be like, why is this taking so long? But it's just the process, and so it's hard to get it on the planet, I think.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be really strong. I think it takes a strong person, and anybody can get the strength. Anybody can. And for me, I love the images, and I love to make layers. For me, I love to move the consciousness with the narrative. So I get all these pieces of a puzzle, and then once I kind of know I have the narrative, then I try to assemble it a certain way, and then I weave different layers of images. So every time you watch it, it's completely different. You'll see different stuff. You could watch it 100 times and notice different things.
Yeah.
But then when you're editing, you have to make a change. You're like, oh my God, how do I make this change? Because there's all these different components to this one clip. If you watch television, usually it's shot in a really great way, but there's not the layers to it.
Right.
And I think the layers are the power that you mention, and how you can really amplify an image.
Well, it's funny they use the word assemble, because I think it's very part of what you're doing with the images and the narrative is you're creating kind of this experience of different assemblage points. How are you consciously relating to that?
Yeah, very consciously, very consciously. That's why I started this film in July. And it took a long time to get the narrative correct. I had things in a certain order, and then I'd think, no, that it doesn't move the way I want it to move. And so it took a long time to get it right. And you just have to be patient with it, and then you have to meditate on it, and it will kind of come together. And so basically, I wait, and I think I'm going the right direction, and then I test it out. I sit with it. I watch it a few times. And actually, I cried so much making this movie. We went through so many boxes of Kleenex.
Yeah.
Because, it was very hard to make from, a soul level. Because even though it's, it's a happy story, it's also a very sad story on the other hand. Because so many people lost this.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
And, all of us, watching this, hopefully, and in this room, you haven't. Yeah. But having this opportunity just doesn't come around to you once. You earned it. And it's going to high school. You have to go and pass algebra, you have to pass history. We're all at different phases of our incarnation. But you have this opportunity to transcend it all. And people who fell for this mind op, it's just terrible because you don't come back from it. You don't. And it's hard to even comprehend how terrible that is. So for those people, it's a sad day for them. And then if you watch something like this and you see you'll see from the Buddhist perspective, it's very serious. They take this type of thing very seriously.
Yeah.
And one clip I wanted to put in, but I couldn't, the vibe wasn't right, was the Dalai Lama. We all know him. Good guy. So he was being interviewed by a group of people. And this was after Trungpa Rinpoche, who was this wild Rinpoche that he, came over in the 60s and 70s during the hippie time. And Yogi Bhajan came over around the same time. And, he came over as a monk, and he wore his monk robes. But he couldn't penetrate the psyche of the Westerners at the time because they were all so wild. It was during the free love and drugs. So in order to speak with them on their level, he did drugs and drank his sake, and that's his way how to penetrate the psyche. And a lot of people had a hard time with that because he was supposed to be, a fancy Buddhist in his fancy robes, and they didn't understand what he was doing. And so he used to sleep with everyone, and, he did his thing. And so one lady asked in this clip, the Dalai Lama, how, she was talking about Trungpa Rinpoche, and she said, asking the Dalai Lama, what if you don't agree with, your teacher anymore because you don't like his behavior, you think he misbehaves, what do you do? Is it okay not to have teachings with him? And the Dalai Lama, he's very politically correct with how he answers, but I love his answer. He says, yes, it's perfectly okay for you not to study with a teacher. That's perfectly okay. You can that's your choice, right? It's all of our choice. It's your choice. But if you received tantric teachings from that teacher, you cannot disrespect him. It's okay after you receive teachings to not ever see him again, but you cannot actively say something bad about that teacher. And it's very, very, very serious because he gave you something so precious. And even though you don't understand what he's doing in the physical realm,
right,
you got something that is beyond anything you could ever imagine. So you can't disrespect that because that is terrible for you.
Right.
And there's cosmic laws. And so the Buddhists, they know about this, and they know that it takes lifetimes, thousands of lifetimes to find a teacher and to study with the teacher and to find a lineage and, to grow in the path.
Yeah.
So that's just something that actually didn't make it in the film, but that's, it's a profound teaching, I thought.
Super profound. I mean, Trungpa, he gave a whole seminary of lectures on this concept, Dharma art. This is really his concept, at least bringing into the Western psyche and mind. And one of the things I'm curious what you think about this, because I think it's so unique to a Dharmic artist. He said, in order to create Dharma art, you have to go from square one to square zero.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that's so profound. I kind of don't understand it, and then I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think with moments when I'm not sure what to do, I kind of go to zero and try to figure it out.
Yeah. And there's another thing that I think is profoundly apparent in these films that you make, which is that this concept of, basically in the Piscean age, we were relating in a relative way to everything. We were relating relatively to God. That's a symbol of God. It's not the God self. We were relating relatively to the earth, relatively to, each other, the sexes, all this kind of in a relative way.
Right.
But this shift of age is now we have to relate directly to our environments, to each other, to what's happening. But he spoke of that in terms of symbolism, and he called it direct symbolism. Now, this is something that this is what I would call of what happens in your films, is that the symbolism is so direct that it hits you, in this very kind of razor's edge type of way.
Yeah.
How does that happen? How are you doing that?
I love symbols.
Yeah.
I love them so much. I study them. I look it up, back to my human design 5-1, investigator.
What are they called? Investigator, what is it?
Heretic and investigator.
Heretic investigator.
Isn't that funny? I read it, and
Hilarious.
Shabbat goes, don't you feel so understood?
It's true. It's true.
And I said, I do. It's so weird to read all about how you operate. That's another subject.
Yeah.
But yes, I love symbols, and I love to hide symbols in my films.
Yeah.
I do it all the time. And if people catch it, that's great. And if they don't, I don't say. but they're in there. And you know, like what inspires me is the Renaissance painters. Like, so the Priory of Sion, which is an old secret order from back in the Middle Ages that's gone over for lifetimes. So like you have the Knights of the Templar, they're the muscle for the Priory of Sion.
Okay.
And so like one of the grandmasters was Botticelli, Isaac Newton, Da Vinci. They were all grandmasters of this secret order. And basically their job was to hide the lineage of Jesus, like inside art and different images, and like hide the esoteric parts of the Christianity teachings, which, you know, the church co-opted and made disappear. They preserved it through art. So if you study their art, which I love to do, you can find a lot of like their call outs to like Mary Magdalene. Like they're like, hey, you know, hey girl, like they do all these like call outs to her, you know, because, you know, I mean, whether you believe it or not, that's irrelevant. There's a whole order that believed it.
Yeah.
And so it's very much probably still there today. And there's a lot of people that have disproven that order. But so like Botticelli is an artist that hid a lot of symbols, and so is Da Vinci, very much so.
Yeah, yeah. So now that this is, as we've talked about, I think this is just one of the most brilliant pieces of art that you all are about to get to see right now.
Thank you.
It feels like a big kind of end of a cycle and beginning of a new cycle, I think, for all of us in different ways. But what's your next project?
Well, we will see. I'm working on a few different things, and I'm hoping by like February I'll be done with another big project.
Okay.
But I keep it under my hat.
Amazing. And anything else you would like for them to know as they kind of watch this film?
Yeah, well, I just encourage you watching it a few times, to be honest. I mean, I'm not saying that because I made it, but it's just, you know, there's a lot of teachings inside of it and a lot of images, and it kind of tells what's going on, you know, how the lineages intersect, you know, what your soul came on the planet to do. Like, this is what you're a part of. Like, this is your lineage. And throughout time and space, a lot of beings fought for you to have this opportunity. A lot of people died for you to do this. And so a lot is at stake. And so, you know, and then if there's ever a time on your spiritual path you have doubts or you're not sure, just watch it, because it will give you the love you need and the energy you need to like push you through, because that's what it's designed to do.
I said earlier, Mandev, when I was talking about our interview and your world premiere this evening, that it, you know, whatever kind of alchemy is happening there, it etches itself on the inside of your third eye. I mean, it's a palpable physical experience.
Thank you. Thank you. That makes me really happy that it does that. That's what I hoped to do. And I just, you know, like with all of these films, that starting with the first one, which, you know, we weren't sure how it was, you know, going to be perceived, but it didn't matter because, you know, it was really tense leading up to that first film.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had a lot at stake too, you know, at that time. And I remember I said to Hadijivan, I said, you know, I don't care if we lose everything. Like everything, like we have to, like, it just doesn't matter if everything's gone, like we have to do this. And then if it could help one person stay on their path, only one,
right?
It's worth it. It's worth everything. And that was sort of my intention the entire time, was just to help one person. And so I think it's done that.
Yeah.
And so the Love of the Lineage is just sort of like ending the year on love and celebrating what we have and moving forward to next year all together.
Amazing. Thank you so much,
Thank
Mandev.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. These are historic treasure teachings, and we know, because we've seen the hundreds and thousands of emails and comments, of how profound this has touched, and even in the people that in the future will watch these films. They're incredible treasures.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Reality Riffing. These are conversations that I think are important with people who are doing great things in the world about subject matters that need to be discussed. If you enjoyed the content, the conversation, please feel free to share with your people, share with your friends and family, rate the podcast below, and also subscribe.